Welcome back, everyone. We are live, another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. As always, I am your host, Jack Greenstock, joined by a smaller panel this Easter Sunday. I want to welcome everybody who is here with us on YouTube already. I do see the show is popping up live. I'm muting myself because I hear myself coming through the headphones. But first, I'm going to pass it over to Michigan and Spartan Grown. How you doing, Spartan?
Doing good, man. Had a fucking busy weekend, great weekend, meeting tons of people and hanging out and smoking. So super ready for this to continue that tradition.
Well, we're very happy to have you. I'm going to swap over to the Cheap Home Grow YouTube account because it seems like nobody's in the chat quite yet, and I think that's because I haven't sent a message. Oh, wait, there they are. Happy Easter. Smart Poker, Cheddar Bob, and C-Dub from NorCal. So it looks like I don't need to go to another YouTube account. But I will remind everybody to click on over to that live chat so you can see all the messages and not have any filtered out. With that said, I'm going to pass it next to Oklahoma and my buddy Brandon Rust. How you doing? You're on mute, bud.
What's going on, fellow listeners, fellow panel members? I'm Brandon Rust. If you don't already know me, you can follow me on social media on Instagram at rust.brandon. And there's links to my company, Bokashi Earthworks. I got new shirts. And my farm, which is Black Label Organics out here in Oklahoma.
Good stuff. Well, welcome back, Brandon. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And next, I'm going to pass it over to Mass and Kyle Breeder. How's it going, Kyle?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad to be here. My name is Kyle Breeder. I specialize in feminized seeds. At the moment, I actually should have some pollen sacs bursted, so I'm pretty excited about that. I got 2 New England rock candies in the tent that are like fully sacked up, but so that'd be kind of cool because I've been riding on the same gear for like almost a year now. But yeah, if anyone wants to look at my social media accounts, you can find me at Predicated Breeding on all social media platforms, and I do have a website, which is the letter P followed by breeding.com. And if anybody has questions about anything, feel free to reach out on social media. And thanks, Jack, for hosting.
Always happy to host, and good to have you back. And bringing it back around to San Diego, I'm going to pass it over to Matthew Gates.
Happy Easter month there, and all the people who celebrate all the various holidays for this springtime. This is Matthew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist, and I work in the cannabis industry, and I'm very happy to talk all things IPM. I share my information on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, the same account that I talk to everyone in chat with, as well as on Instagram and Twitter at SyncAngel for both of those. So check out that. I have a bunch of new videos coming out soon. And I said it last week, but I'll say it again. I also recently became staff writer for Skunk Magazine, and I'm still excited about that and all of the various things I can do to help us be biosecure in this springtime.
We're happy to have you, and if I was a better host, I would say welcome, writer of Skunk Magazine, staff writer at Skunk Magazine, Matthew Gates. Maybe next week I'll step it up with my.
Oh, don't worry about it. I am still me.
It's all right. It's a good credibility nod, and I'm glad that you're able to do work over there. And also with the Coca for Cannabis website. I don't know if that has gone live yet, but we don't have Dr. MJ with us this week to let us know. So I guess Matthew, you could let us know if it is live or not. And yeah, it's cool stuff. It is Easter, as well as the one that you said that I can't pronounce or spell, so you'll have to send that to me.
Me neither, probably.
Put it in the title. So has any of the content gone live over there at Coca for Cannabis?
No, it's very soon, and there will be more moving forward. Probably a forum for IPM, and another thing that I want to work on that's very likely to come about is I want to have a submission form to help answer people's questions, cursory questions about pests that they might come across, because it's really important to me to help as many people as possible and have as many ways to do that, access points to do so. And then also marry that information with biogeographic information. In other words, if people are seeing new pests or innocuous pests or rare ones in different areas, if they feel comfortable, they can kind of show what general region they're in. like cannabis aphid tracking, for example, various powdery mildews and that kind of a thing. I think that'd be a huge benefit to the infrastructure for cannabis IPM that doesn't really exist yet, like it does for other crops.
That sounds amazing, and I really look forward to that if and when it does come. I want to say a big shout out to Dr. MJ and all the work he does. He's not with us this week, but I saw that one of his accounts he got locked out of. I jokingly wrote unlock the doc. I also want to say welcome to Hota Herb. Good to see you, buddy.
Happening.
Happy day. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Happy spring.
Let the
Good to
people know
see
where
you.
they can find you and how you've been doing. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Jason, or Hota Herb, JOTAHERB on Instagram. And you can find me there. I've also been spending a good amount of time on Clubhouse. So there's lots of places to find me and track me down. And glad to be here again, as always. It's nice to catch up with you guys. Just, again, prepping things for spring. So I spent today, I actually got out there with some compost tea and sprayed down the beds with some fresh compost tea, and it's part of my yard where it wasn't growing so well. So just kind of getting into the outdoor season here.
I got to say, I'm proud as a panel that we're representing the United States so thoroughly. We've got a few guys on the East Coast, a few guys on the West Coast, and then we got Spartan over there in Michigan up north, and we got Brandon down south, kind of touching all corners. And it's pretty cool that we've got a lot of our following is listening from the United States, but we have people internationally as well. So shout out to everybody here in the chat who listens live and afterwards. It's a pleasure that we have such a cool audience, and I'm really thankful for everyone who shows up each week. I wanted to, because it is a smaller panel this week, give a chance to Kyle Breeder to talk a little bit about some of his projects that he's got going on, and maybe even reflect on some of your successes from your projects last year, and what do you want to keep on doing moving forward, and things that you might be changing.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, right now, so I just kind of been working my own gear. I do plan on influencing some. I have the Mac cut that I just got from a buddy of mine, the Breeder's cut. I had some skunk going on too, so I'm going to do some just some kind of interesting things with that, just see where it goes. And I will say this, and I think we brought it up last time, Jack, or you had asked me, but like, I just want to say how important it really is to test your plants out, man, because I haven't checked gender of a single plant that I've had since I started with the material that I got from doing all the stress tests, and I haven't had a single intersex trait once. So I mean, it is extremely important for anybody that's listening to like just put in a little bit of work if you want to start kind of being a breeder or seeds, or if you're getting into that realm, and just really take your time. Just make sure that the plants check out. I mean, because it's you don't have to worry at all for the most part. I mean, some people, they still have natural traits where, there's extreme situations. They're still going to throw intersex traits. But like I said, I haven't had any issues, and nor have had feedback from really anybody that's had issues either. But I guess to go back to what we were talking about, yeah, so I got some just a bunch of different crosses going on right now. I got 2 rock candy mothers that are fully sprayed with sorbitol-sulfate. If anybody has any questions about what I'm doing and how to get that, feel free to ask. I'll just share where I get the information from or what I'm doing personally, spray regimens and stuff. But I plan on doing that cross. That'll bring some seeds to the market, and some other material that I can work with as well. And yeah, I mean, I've been riding on the same gear for a year, which is it's getting old. I mean, I think everyone that's been is waiting on new material, but it all turned out really great. I mean, I couldn't complain at all.
So you're reversing the rock candy
happy with that
female that you've got, and it sounds like you've got that Mac. So can the people expect maybe in the short or maybe long term to see a rock candy cross the Mac if that ends up turning out like you're hoping? Because it sounds like you definitely want to put it through some testing, whether in-house or with a small group or large group. I don't know what your testing process is outside of your own work. I know that you do a lot of rigorous like stress testing on the like root binding, overwatering, underwatering, heat, and lots of other things in the early stages to find good stuff to work with that won't show intersex traits under stress. So I'm just curious what you plan to do after you cross the rock candy with whatever else it is, maybe not even the Mac.
Yeah, I mean, well, so I talked to Cap himself, and we had a long conversation about Mac itself, and just a 30-minute conversation. But basically, and if you talk to other people in the industry, the breeder's smack herself doesn't accept. So it's a bunch of runs, a bunch of mutants, and you get maybe from his own mouth, handful or a small handful of viable seeds. A handful would be a lot, essentially, because you have a big hand or something, but you don't get many, basically. So I don't know. So I'm going to see if maybe how that turns out, because actually I have the buddy who gave it to me it was 4 feet tall, which was a pretty a good gift, because I just threw her right in the flower, and I took I let her get acclimated for a week or two, and I took cuttings and wheat to a flower, which is whatever. It just will take 2 weeks to revert back to veg. So basically she's already part of the cross, so I'm going to see how that turns out. And I guess if she isn't that well, I'm hoping to at least get a couple of viable seeds out of there, and then maybe hopefully I would get something from there. And then I can't imagine it just being nothing but pure fire between the two plants together, because anything rock candy touches is like gold. And Mac is just a pretty savage, heavy yielder. Her secondary stems are all wicked sturdy. She's just a really good plant overall. But worst case scenario, and I've been thinking about this, is if I can't get her to accept pollen, that maybe I can get her to give pollen. So I have that plant gave me, I actually just today, ironically, an hour before when this whole thing started, I just took clones from her. So I have like eight clones in the dome. So if I can't get her to receive, I'll definitely take those clones and try to have her give, and maybe cross into some of Brandon's beautiful lime work that he has. I still have that lime cut, maybe some lime mac or something. And I'll run up to Brandon and stuff first, obviously, but give him some seeds and we'll play around with that stuff. But yeah, so between the lime, the raw candy, the mac, and I have some other I have some wedding cake crossed with Afghan cherries, which is like extremely sticky, and there's barely any stigma showing yet. So I'm kind of excited about that. So yeah, there's a couple variations, and we'll just kind of see how that works out.
I'm excited to see what comes from it for sure. I'm curious to see if what you've heard lines up, because oftentimes I think like if it happens to one breeder, they might think it's going to be universal. Like I saw Mr. Soul having some issues breeding with the Mac, and I've also heard other people having issues breeding with it. But then I think I saw Rasta Jeff, and maybe he said he got less seeds or something too. But there's people that are successfully getting at least some seeds out of it. And even if it's just something that you cross, get a few seeds and then find a nice cut and then work with that cut, it might not continue to hold onto some of those negative traits that make it harder to breed with. And I'm also curious to see how it will work if you reverse that as the pollen donor. It seems like a lot of people have actually gone that approach. There's Mac S1 all over, and then Mac cross to basically everything and anything. Before the show, we actually talked a little bit about a Mac cross. Brandon Rust and myself, I think it was Dosey Mac, and I want to pass it over to Brandon so we can share a little bit of information about that Dosey Mac. If you do feel like talking about it, I don't know if that was something to kind of keep under the, cards close to the chest.
We're gonna run a lot of it because it's a beautiful plant. It's Dosey-Do crossed into Mac. The Mac was a male. It wasn't, so I've seen a lot of Mac crosses. People using the male from packs that they hunted, and everything that I've seen has been fine. And everything that I've seen has been pretty fire. I have a bunch of stuff that I made with the Mac V2. I did Limarilla, my breeder cut with Mac V2. I did the gas number 4 cut that I have, which has a 2.5% CBG. I crossed Y87, which is a citrus farmer from Dungeon Vault, and Bodie's citrus granola funk crossed together. I crossed that with the Mac V2, and then I also crossed some old school stuff, some Trainwreck Blueberry MK Ultra from like 20-year-old seed stock, and I'm running all of those things right now.
So one question about the CBG cultivar. You said it had 2% CBG. What day of flower, how many weeks did you take that when you flowered it
out? We take everything full term. What's really interesting, what we're seeing consistently, which with some type of with the style of cultivation I'm doing across the board, with every variety, we're seeing 1.5 to 2% typically of CBG on the testing. So, and then when it's concentrated, you can see it too.
So I'm curious if, everybody's got their ideal harvest window, and if, you push, I know you said full term. I don't know what that means, like 9 weeks, 10 weeks. Some people run like stuff like the GMO goes 78, 84 days. I saw somebody else take it at. So I'm always curious how far people push stuff into flower. And I've just heard in the past that if there's CBG in there, there's a potential that it could have gotten pushed further. But at the same time, there's high CBG like hemp and stuff that's bred to have high CBG. And there's stuff that just has CBG in it naturally. So that's why I brought it up, because I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think it could have, maybe it would have gotten a little more THC. But I'm kind of with you that you probably did take it full term, and maybe those your cultivation
the THC is
methods.
still really high too. I think what's happening is some kind of biosynthetic pathway is being stimulated, and I don't know exactly, the biomechanics of it yet, but it's not just specific cultivars. We have cultivars that go, 8 weeks. We have ones that go full 10 weeks, and we're seeing it in all of them. That's what's interesting. Either that or just the testing, which out here in Oklahoma could be just, it's all over the place.
It could be that, but I think that if it's showing up in the test, then it's probably there. So it could be methods or harvest time or cultivar or a mix of every single one of those things. But I'm curious if you noticed before, when you didn't have varieties testing with CBG at those levels, any difference in the effects. I'm not even off the top of my head actually familiar with what CBG does. A lot of the minor cannabinoids I'm not as familiar with, but do you notice any unique impact from the higher CBG in the one that was like 2%?
No, it is kind of one of the smokes that I enjoy, regularly. And there's really only a couple of varieties that I consistently go back to, that's like the Death Breath that I have, Sour Cheese Berry. That one's really nice. The GMO Cherry Pie is really nice, but I ran out of that. And then this stuff that I'm smoking on here.
I got some bad news and cherry pie news. I gave the mother plant back to the guy who gave me his cherry pie cut instead of just giving him a cut, because I had a small-ish mother plant, so it was easier just to have like 3 or 4 cuts left on it. And he ended up losing that plant, so I no longer have the cherry pie that I was running for a little while, which is a little bit sad. But at the same time, I make high CBN RSO now, which kind of, for those who don't know, CBN is very sedating. And if you take RSO, which is mostly THC, and get it kind of hot and run it a little bit longer in something like a mug warmer, or you can put it in your oven, whatever you want to do, decarb it, you could boil it, whatever you want to do. But I just basically run it really long on a mug warmer at the hottest setting, essentially. And I get myself like a few tubes of super high CBN RSO. So if I ever am having issues with sleep, you take a little 0.2 to 0.4, maybe 0.5 of that, and it will put you down in, 90 minutes to 120, like hour and a half, 2 hours. And it hits pretty hard and help you sleep through the night. So definitely recommend that to anybody who's got issues with insomnia. If you have access to RSO or can make your own, it's definitely the remedy that's helped me, where I don't even I love that cherry pie cut because it helped me with sleep. And insomnia is something I've dealt with for a long time. And of the hundreds or thousands of cultivars I've tried smoking, it's rare to find one that will actually give me that effect. So Cheddar Bob says, you need cherry pie, I'll send you a cutting or 2. Cheers, Cheddar Bob. That'd be cool. We probably, I don't know if we have the same one or a different one, but I'm always interested to flower out what is labeled cherry pie, because there's like cherry pie, there's cherry pie kush, there's cherry pie OG. It's like, is it all the same? Are they related? Are they crosses, S1s? A lot of the San Fran cherry pie is known for herming, but the one I had never herming me or my buddy who runs it more commercially, and he's kind of picky. But maybe that was the issue. Maybe that's why I got rid of it. Who knows? And he just didn't want to tell me. But yeah, it's mine came by way of Florida through a local hydro store, which no longer is in service. They went out of business, but I got it from a guy who was friends with a guy over there. So definitely a bummer when you lose a cut, though. That's why I'm trying to teach myself tissue culture, so that way if I ever find any good genetics, I can hang on to them for the long term. I was going to ask if anybody else has really messed around with tissue culture, but I think I know the answer to that question already. But I'm curious if anybody in the chat has messed around with it at all. And if you do, drop some tips. I'm still reading my books and haven't gone hands-on just yet, doing a lot more research than actual experience still. But it's something I'm looking into for the future for sure. Is anybody holding any long-term cuttings, I guess, is the question. Because I know, Kyle, you said you've got a rock candy. Brandon, you said you got your Limarilla breeder cut. How long have you been keeping those around for?
I don't know. I've had it for a couple of years. It was one of the phenos I found in the second hunt of that variety. I lost the best one that I ever had. I haven't found anything like it. It was kind of just a beast of a plant. But I have some new stuff, some new crosses that are coming, and I have some S1s of the Death Breath. I've got a bunch of stuff. I'm about to get this box set up. I'm just waiting for the table racks, just in the AC to be installed, and it should be done within maybe like 10 days. And I already have all my things popped. I have like 53 Black Lime Reserve F1 for Mean Gene. I have around like 38 or 40 gas number 4 times Mac V2, and I have some pancakes. I have a bunch of that high divorce rate from My Name is Earl.
Pancakes is tasty, man. I've had a chance to taste some concentrate of that. I really liked it. It was like a lemon cake. That's what it tasted like to me. It was fucking amazing good.
Nice. Yeah, so I'll be hunting a bunch of stuff. But my plan is to find the most badass male out of the Mac times gas, or the gas times Mac V2, and use that for future breeding. And then I also want to, I'll find like the best phenos of the Black Lime Reserve and use that for some different stuff. Might do Limarilla V2. So grab that Gorilla Glue cut back and then hit that with, one of those really nice Black Lime Reserve males that I find, and make a reg seed line, because I have so many people ask me about that. I have a lot of projects that I'm gonna work in, and we got a lot of stuff with the farm and all that stuff coming up with the auto flowers for from Full Duplex. A lot of different stuff, man.
The longest cut I've had is probably my Spartan Glue, and I've had it at least 5 years, but it's been a cut of a cut of a cut of a cut. It's not like I kept one plant that long.
Yeah, you refresh the mother.
Yeah.
How has
Same
it
here.
changed at all? Have you noticed any changes over the time, Spartan, in vigor or flavor or anything like that?
It's improved. It's only gotten better.
Yeah, I thought Rock Candy was my latest cut, but I just found out that my best friend, when I first started, I gave him a clone of if you look at way back on my feed, I had a plant called Princess Elsa, and
I remember that one.
Yeah, I was at his house not that long ago, and he was like, "Yeah, do you want this back?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I still got the Elsa cut." I was like, "What? What are you doing with that?" He's like, "I just figured you might want it one day," and so I took it back, man. And that thing's still like extreme fire, so I'm gonna start playing with that too. But that was from 2018, so I definitely don't have as far as back as Spartan goes. But so I have Elsa back in the project too, which she'll be,
That's rad.
which is cool. She turns perp. She turns perp in cool temps. So yeah, if you look at that video on my website, man, that plant just gets like ridiculously iced out, man. But yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that.
It's super frosty for sure. It's cool to see, Spartan, that yours has gotten better over time. A lot of people talk about epigenetic drift and their plant getting worse and maybe picking up pathogens and things like that. But maybe as you got better as a cultivator, or you got more used to how it grew, it just
it's outside. It's outside. I rejuvenated it outside. So
the sun.
I always like to grow it at least. I haven't grown it last year, but every year I do 1 or 2 plants outside, and I usually always, one of those is always Spartan Glue. So and then it gets cloned and brought back inside. I really believe in it. I really believe that it keeps them good.
You ever try taking one that you didn't do that to, and then growing them together to see like
yeah, all my other plants, yep.
You see a difference for sure?
I mean, it all depends. It's like I don't see the, like when I take if I run the two together, they seem pretty similar. But what I don't do is continue cloning off of that perpetually, because I'm not gonna keep an extra mom of. I have plant counts. I have a low plant count, in my opinion, 24. So I don't really want to sacrifice my plant count to do a long test like that for a long period of time. So I haven't done a long test, no, but I've taken a cut and ran it against an outdoor clone versus an indoor clone, yes, and they were similar. They were both ran indoor though, to be clear. But I don't know if everybody else got to answer that question about how long they've had a cut.
I think Hota Herb might be the one that didn't. I don't have any. I pop seeds every single run, and the cherry pie was the only one I was holding. I gave the J1 to some friends, and I'm not holding that anymore either.
Yeah, I don't hold on to stuff.
We have like our friend
Matthew, are you holding anything? Sorry, not to disinclude you.
No, I appreciate you not dismissing that. No, not at the moment. And I also feel that it's certainly a good biosecurity idea to not do that, but you have to be vigilant, and I know people who have had, or at least they've told me, I have no way to verify this, right? But I've worked with people who've said they've had cuts over like 7, 10, 15, 20 years. And they say that they've noticed like they'll either get a big pathogen load, which is usually what happens when I'm called in, but that's just anecdote. Or in one case, like the person just felt like the potency did change over time, lower, decreased, but also he seemed to feel like it was different, like in the way that like an aged vineyard might be different, perhaps. But again, I wonder how much of that is his personal bias versus the actuality of the situation. It's certainly true that the longer you live as a living organism, with some caveats here, the more likely you'll have some sort of a different microbial load over time. Age plays a factor, location plays a factor, obviously, and all the environmental things therein. But it doesn't guarantee that it'll be bad.
So we have a few questions from the chat that I would like to get to. From first Grow IG, they were saying, I was wondering if y'all would be willing to talk about different stages of herms and how they can be dealt with. And they're referring to hermaphroditic plants, or I believe it's dioecious, or no,
Monoecious?
monoecious.
Monoecious?
They have
Monoecious? One
both
house?
both sexes on the same plant, which is unideal for cultivating cannabis. We want them to be on separate, females all by themselves, males all by themselves. And so they're asking, how can it be dealt with? I DM'd Jack and Spartan pictures on IG, and I'm actually looking at them now over here on my phone. Spartan, I don't know if you had a chance to get a glance, but they're at week 5.
I'd already responded back to them.
I chop them down and throw them out. That's how I deal with them. That's basically all you can do with a herb is chop them down and throw them out. Unless you're in like week 7 or 8 and something's showing up, because at that point it's unlikely that it's really going to probably will cause you problems. But yeah, no, if you're in week 5 and you got a herb, it's nothing left to do but chop that puppy down and move on.
Good way of dealing with it. A lot of people definitely take that approach. I've heard people plucking the things off. There's a few different herms. There's like if you flower it for like 20 weeks and it's like a 10-weeker, eventually somewhere past its finishing time, a lot of stuff will throw late nanners. That's one type of herm. Then there's the early herm at like week 3, right at the very beginning of flower. You see both female pistils and male pollen sacs, full blown herm. And they're a different thing. What we're seeing here is what I would imagine was maybe due to some stress, overfeeding, heat, who knows, maybe it's just purely genetics, but there's only a few. It doesn't look like there are tons and tons of them, and it definitely does appear to be a nanner. So you're correctly diagnosing it, and you could chop out the whole plant. It doesn't look like there's too many plants in that whole room, maybe like 4 or 5 plants. So chopping that out would be a big loss. So I could see why you might want to push through, but it would risk seeding up your plants. So that is the risk that you have to be willing to take, because that might not be the only one. There's probably stuff lower down that if it pops and then that wind is blowing around, it's going to start pollinating stuff all over that tent. And a little bit of pollen goes a really long way. So you might end up with way more seeds than you're expecting. So like Hota was saying,
have already popped. It might have already popped. If you're seeing them, chances are you probably missed them already.
This is something that you're counting on for medicine and you need to harvest. This time of year, you can get away with a small greenhouse that you can put outside. Put that plant out there, isolate it, and then go out there, do your best to pick the herms off, and you'll still probably have seed in your bud, but you'll have medicine too.
And seeded bud can be made into hash. It can be made into RSO. It can be smoked. I've smoked some of my seeded bud just to sample it when I'm doing breeding runs. Even though most of it I make dry sift, so it's much weaker. I'll take some of the buds pure, even though they're fully seeded up. I gave one to a buddy, and he was shocked. It was like going back like 10 or 20 years in time for him. Because when you break up a bud that's intentionally seeded, there are, as Spartan knows, because he's just been breaking up buds, tons of seeds. In a single bud you can get 20, 30, 50 seeds, and I got thousands off 3 or 4 plants, not thousands, a little over 1,000 off of 3 plants that were maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, and only in a few gallon pots. It wasn't like a giant operation. So
I wonder if there's not like a culinary use as well that might be overlooked, or maybe something else similar to that.
it's great bird seed or fishing lure. That was with the loophole that it was sold under for a long time in the United States before the hemp farm bill was passed that made cannabis seed completely legal because it's under 0.3% THC and always will be. So
Cannabis seed is really high in protein. It's really good for you. Taking 2 tablespoons of hemp seed oil a day is actually recommended for general health. So eating your cannabis seeds is also going to be extremely beneficial. They're high in protein. They have some good fiber in them. And hopefully you're growing them in a good environment. So you're probably not taking in any chemicals or anything. So it's a nice, natural, clean source of those proteins.
yeah, for me, it's like
hemp
all
seeds are great.
organic. No
or you
pest.
can just sprout them. You can sprout just like all of your fucking seeds from your vegetables, everything. Just sprout those fuckers. Make a seed sprout tea. Fucking water it in. Why not? You can get all those nutrients, those beginning nutrients. You can at least utilize it. Don't just throw it
Pesticides.
away.
Science.
That is true. You can do
Actual
like
hemp
an
seed is very cheap. Bulk. Oh shit, my connection's unstable. Sorry if I cut out. But I was gonna say hemp seed in bulk is actually pretty cheap to buy as like a nutrition supplement. You can buy it on Amazon. It's legal and widely available. So I wouldn't expect that most people that are growing plants in their home are gonna want to get a high volume of seed unless they're breeding intentionally. But if you do, it's not the end of the world. So I definitely think that this Hermy issue is one that needs to be addressed and talked about, though, because it happens to people. For whether it's their fault or the breeder's fault, it doesn't matter. There's no need to point fingers at certain points because you just got to deal with it. And at this point, it has enough pollen sacs that it can make lots of seeds. So I would suggest culling it as well. And or like Spartan said, if you can get it into a separate area entirely and finish it out there, that would be an option. But otherwise, you might have to bite the bullet and just pull it.
Yep.
Could be
You
the
know,
new GG4.
I'm gonna start running it again.
We got DG4 in my garden again. I gotta grow her out, get her back in the flower. I haven't had her in a while. There's
Rest in
another
peace,
What
question.
is
Josie.
everyone growing right now, anyways?
Oh goodness.
Ooh, I've got some.
Sorry,
F2
folks.
Velvet
I
Punch.
got to bounce out. Jack, it was great seeing everybody. Thank you for having me. Brandon, Spartan, Kyle Breeder. I see Matthew's on there as well. Hopefully, everybody have a fantastic evening. And thank you for having me as always. I am Hota Herb, JOTAHERB on Instagram, or Jason Gideon on Clubhouse. So feel free to find me on Clubhouse or find me on Instagram. That's the best place to reach out to me. So everybody have an awesome night. Happy Sunday, happy spring, and I'll talk to you all soon.
A good Easter.
Good
Spring Hota.
Thanks for dropping in. I can't wait
Bye.
till Clubhouse opens up to Android, so then maybe I can jump on there and
they
listen
need
in.
to.
Me
They
too.
definitely need to. All right, guys, have a great one.
So we've got another question from Mamalo710 who asks, can you ask Brandon if he has thoughts on red bud living soil out of Oklahoma, or if he's ever used it?
Well, I'll tell you what. I go to their store and I buy hundreds of pounds of gypsum from them. So that is, they have a great source of gypsum. I mean, me personally, if you really want to have a good idea of the quality of the soil, you need to call the owner and you need to ask questions. Ask them what their target nutritional levels are. Ask them, what products they're using. Ask them questions, because if they can't give you the proper answers, then it might not be the right soil. I haven't used it personally, but I mean, I personally wouldn't use any soil that uses perlite. I know there's perlite mix in there. It just, for me, especially if I'm doing something like outdoor and pots, that stuff will float to the surface of the soil, blow away in the wind, and it's, it just it makes trash.
So does build a soil or big roots use perlite at all?
No,
That's good.
they use a volcanic pumice. It stays in place, and it takes a very, very long time to break down. When it does, it breaks down into volcanic mineral nutrients, beneficial things for the soil. But speaking of soil, I just shared a post the other day, and I sent my base mix off to testing, and I have, the recipe for what I need to do to get the soil to actual, like an actual water only soil, where you could plant your plant in this thing and just give it, water, and then maybe 1 or 2 waterings with maybe some potassium. But other than that, it's like going to be all matched for batch with target nutritional levels, all tested out for cannabis. And I'm just waiting on the heavy metals testing. If the heavy metals testing comes back good, well, then I can put the soil onto market. I can add the rest of the recommendations. I can retest everything again after I have the small mineral inputs that I need to do the small adjustments for the cations and the pH balance and everything else. And then I should be able to just bag up a really good soil for people to use. But again, I need to make sure all the testing is proper and there's no heavy metals, because I can't be held responsible or I don't want to be held responsible or create a bad name. If I'm going to do something, I want it to be done correctly, and I want it to be, the best possible soil that I could possibly build, with the knowledge that I've obtained.
Definitely can get past the heavy metals by testing your source materials and inputs for sure. A lot of them might come with it, but it's always worth before bagging it up, doing a test batch yourself and getting that tested for, because like you said, you don't want to like ruin your company's good name on something like heavy metals. And the thing that I wanted to say about water only soils is, like, I think that they are possible and they might even be out there already. I personally grew with the M3 soil, and depending on your pot size, you can definitely grow a plant from start to finish with just water. Would it be better if maybe you use worm castings or teas, or if you had a giant, way, way bigger pot like Coots Mix? If you have a 600-gallon or 1,000-gallon pot and there's a good, worm casting source, I think you could go start to finish with no anything but water. But it just depends. Most people aren't going to grow in a 600-gallon pot. That's an extreme example, but like guys like Sungrown 707 who are outdoor in California, they can grow their 6 plants in those giant ass pots and give it just water. Maybe they'll do a happy endings tea or something from Green Bicycles, but they don't have to. They'll definitely be able to get the harvest. But to have a bagged soil like that, it usually comes with a heftier price tag. So it'd be cool to see where you'll be able to get it into the market. And I'm happy for you to try and put something out there, because I know how much time and effort you've put into the knowledge and research. And I've been seeing you build soil since you were out here in San Diego, watching your videos on Instagram, hitting that little save button so I could go back and watch your recipe and kind of tweak and amend my recipe to be a little bit more like it or a little less like it, and see which ones work better. And it's definitely really cool because everybody's kind of got their own mix. Mm-hmm. I used Spartan Grown's reamendment recipe for the M3 and it worked fantastically, but I'm always learning and listening, and I use some of your stuff now, the Micro Plus and Amino N Plus, which I'm a big fan of both of those, as well as the Bokashi. But there's always something more, experimenting with different mulches and things like that.
So what I was aiming to do is to try to mimic, to be able to grow, the size plants that I grow in a 10-gallon pot, doing water on it's plants eat so much potassium, and I can't start the soil with that much potassium in it because it would be unbalanced. But what I'm doing with this mix is, when you talk about water soluble nutrition and having balanced water soluble nutrition, let's say you do this in soilless media, hydroponic, cocoa, rock wool, the same some of the same principles apply. So the soil falls into solution, and my goal is to have that soil have a really high concentration, like a ppm of around 1200. So that's a pretty decent, decently high parts per million of total dissolved, nutrition that's in solution in that soil. You can grow huge plants with around 800 to 1,000 in soil. So this is kind of
How large of a volume of soil? Like what size pot or bed?
well, I grow in 10-gallon pots at the facility, and if you guys look at my IG, I grow pretty big plants in those.
Yeah.
those things.
One could argue then at that point, do you need much more than 10 gallons? Because the plants that you grow are pretty fucking commercial size, and most people at home grow are going to have that big or smaller.
When you're going to be able to put this thing in, a 5-gallon or 7-gallon pot at home, and you're just growing little, plants that are this big, I mean, it's going to crush it. It's going to crush it better than any of the other soils on the market because they've been balanced. I mean, I have the proper aeration in there. I have done so much research. It's going to be a really great soil. I can't wait for you guys. I'll send everybody some, and you guys can try it.
I'll run some, no doubt.
Yeah.
If you want to send it back my way, I'll always be happy to try it out.
I'll fucking run that shit.
Yeah.
I got a question from somebody recently.
When I get, sorry, I'll let you go in 1 second.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I'll get a bag of that fucking soil and I'll run your fucking genetics in it too.
Oh yeah, dude. And the thing is, I'm just creating this. I have baselines, right, for all these target levels, and I'm just following that. And I'm trying to make something really efficient, where a home grower could literally take. I want it to also complement the products that I have. So if you want to rerun this soil, the things like the AgSil and the aminos and microbes, those things all come into play to help these soils along. So I'll have very, very simple, basic recipes that don't take a whole lot of involvement,
We look forward to hearing more when it comes closer to fruition and the people will have it available to them, and some of us getting to try it out will be awesome. Not Spartan. Matthew, you had something to say just a second ago. Maybe you had a question from the chat or otherwise?
Yeah, I had a question from somebody who asked how much Bokashi they would need from Brandon for a 5,000 square foot area. Soil, I guess. They're growing in the soil.
So here's the thing. Bokashi is really useful, and it's great for so many aspects, but it's not something that you use at scale for modified soil mixes. Can really help with beneficial microorganisms and stuff like that. But the amount that you need, it just makes more sense to use the microbial inoculants and then to use the Bokashi stuff for your like composting, for food scrap waste. It does make a good mulch, and it's super awesome, especially if you have worms in your pots. But for scale, there's pros and cons,
What would you consider to be large scale versus small scale?
I would say anything probably larger than like a large home grow, because once you start getting into like commercial cultivation, it's my personal recommendation that you do things like you get your soil tested and you look at numbers and you do the agronomy work instead of just guessing, because although they have advantages, they're going to feed your worms. It's going to make that, worm populations explode. It gives you more carbon, the new mineral inputs. But the problem with the Bokashis are also going to be because it's not going to be balanced for every point of that plant's life, right? I try to balance what I have for like a general, amount of mineral nutrition. But if you only need something like potassium and then you add a bunch of, magnesium and compost and stuff like that, you jack up that magnesium and you start having antagonism with the uptake of that potassium that you are deficient in, and it causes further problems. There things
Yeah,
like
knocks out phosphorus, and then you're really screwed.
So I'll say this though, like the Bokashi a little bit goes a really long way, at least how I'm using it in my system.
yeah.
Like I grow in 5 square feet, which is 100 times smaller than the operation that they're talking about, but I use one handful. So if I can use one handful in my 5 square feet and have it be sufficient to cover, that means 100 handfuls in theory could cover their 5,000 square feet. And I'm not sure how large
Yeah.
you are at.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. I just figured it'd be a
So I have
small
done the
ratio.
Bokashi. I have done Bokashi. I was doing it and stuff, but one of the things is when I came into this almost 2 years ago, as far as coming onto the white market, there were things that I had to learn and adapt to as I wanted to scale and keep the high quality craft, right? Because there are certain things that I have found out that don't really need to be in play. And so I'm focused more on the small things, the small adjustments, the mineral nutrition and the balance, right? Having sufficiency and balance. That's my main focus. And then I can take specific cultivars that I've done tissue testing with, for instance, the Death Breath. It has a less nitrogen requirement, a higher phosphate requirement, right? So what I have to do with that variety is I can run one in a whole bed or all on the same table, and I can know already what I'm going to do for my top dress. For everything else except this variety here, it's going to need a little bit more here, and I'll adjust that mix to accordingly if that's if I need to
I think you just saved them a lot of money. I appreciate that.
Well,
yeah.
and you're going the route where you can just watering it in, where your microbial inoculant, like a Micro Plus, you're going to water it
Exactly.
in, and instead of having them sprinkle 100 handfuls, they're just brushing it in with that watering that they'd already be doing. So it
Mhm.
comes to the efficiency, and you're
Yeah.
getting to the same end product. I'm sure, because I know you're the type of person, you're testing
Yes.
your product, you're getting the same results at the end. So
Yeah.
it's like you're getting to the same finish line with easier input. So I think it makes a lot of sense what you're doing at scale.
I have
So
the same sort of mentality. Yeah.
I'm also about self-sufficiency. I want people to be self-sufficient. I offer products mostly for the home growers, right? I get hit up by people who have commercial farms, and that's where I help them with consulting so they can stop making compost teas at scale, and so they can just focus on the mineral nutrition and again, sufficiency and balance, and so they can cut back on their cost of their inputs,
I
and
do
their
think
all of
oh,
that. There's a whole thing that goes with it. If you're scaling and you want to add those microbes that help cycle phosphorus and manganese, and I have all this tests for that, is the Microbe Plus Spore, because you can make that yourself. It's less expensive to. I don't have to make it, because I have to make this, and I have to make small volumes for people that don't necessarily need to make 5 gallons at a time, so it's more convenient, and I do this for the convenience factor, but I highly recommend that if you can, you just get the spore, because it's more cost effective for you, because I don't have to put stickers on here. I don't have to bottle the stuff up. I don't have to do the solid state fermentation. It's like, it costs me money and time and labor, and if I can do it cheaper, I would rather pass that savings on to the customer and just have them buy the spore and make it themselves. So if you're going to commercially cultivate, get the Micro Plus Spore, make it yourself, and do what I do and use that shit once, twice a week, and
you have to agree. A lot of people make some superfluous mixtures that aren't necessary for the end result to be, I think, what a lot of people would call acceptable or even above, acceptable, excellent even.
So
I guess it's a different
if-
approach if you go with the Bokashi though top dress, because like how I'm set up in the earth box, I'm top dressing some Bokashi into some earthworm castings, and then it stays mulched over, and I do that once, maybe twice a run, but last time it was just one time, and it kept a thick microbial mat the entire time from when I put it in there all the way to the end of the run. As long as I kept it wet or damp with that mulch layer, it stayed. I only inoculated once.
It can help. It was just for us, it was just too time consuming, and the manufacturing process is pretty intense and labor intensive, and so I have
Work
to
smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, and so one of the things is It would be one of the things that I would really love to see on scale, and it's something that we're working with a cannabis waste disposal company where they can dry all their material, mulch it up, turn it into a bokashi. But what I'd like to see is I'd like to see bioremediation. I'd like to see that type of bokashi is more beneficial in ag land soils because it hasn't been turned into these modified growing mix that are all porous and full of nutrition. Even if it's not in balance, a lot of times when you have soil and you're building it, you adding that type of component to it, it adds the organic matter, the microbial component, the mineral component. And in that aspect, it's a massive plus. But I had just misinterpreted, some of the ag science because a lot of the stuff didn't exist for cannabis. And so I'm looking at things from agriculture papers, ag research papers from college, university studies, and science white papers. And I have to see what translates over best. And I have to see what's applicable, what science is applicable. And I need to see the effect of it. And if I don't see an effect, then it's not worth me to keep on promoting something, So Bokashi
Totally, I
is great
understand that.
for some of the things I do, but I really, if you want to do it at scale, probably less is more approach. And I would say you could probably do 10 pounds, maybe 15 pounds of Bokashi for maybe 5,000 square feet of cannabis.
But I do appreciate that honest answer. And I also throw out a similar sort of sentiment about like new cutting edge. We've talked about it before, like bleeding edge technologies or sort of interesting things. You know me. I liked the cool drone that, I like the laser system for the mosquitoes, the photonic fence. I liked the drone that goes in and like Half-Life style man hacks the moths and other things that it scans and finds. That's cool stuff. And there's some things for like sonic and like UV and that sort of a thing that some products work better than others, or they're sort of ambiguous. And I think it's really important that we really assess, what are the demonstrable, quantifiable benefits, that way. And like you say, if you're learned on those topics, if you're able to make those decisions for yourself because you're able to read about the proof or even ask for that proof, it goes a long way to saving you money, time, stress, and resources in general, which is always a plus.
I've got someone that we can maybe help save some stress. Smashed Cannabis asks, I have a question. Spartan grown last night, the walls of my tent were sweating. I had to pull everything out and clean up. I pulled the tent off the wall, but this could be a problem. So I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts about that comment, I guess, more than a question.
So pull your tent away from your wall. Make sure there's a fan that's blowing behind there. What's going on is that wall is radiating probably colder temperature than your tent. And if you're over, I believe I don't know if it's 20 or 30 degree difference, you're going to get condensation. So to prevent that, you're going to have to do, some people will go insulation and some people will do like a lung room kind of a style. So you can condition the room around the tent so that the condensation will appear on the wall itself, but it's still going to be an issue. So the permanent fix, or the temporary fix, is pull the tent away from the wall so there's this air gap and put a fan there to exhaust or move that air. And it's going to make that situation probably be at least a temporary fix until you can get like a wall with insulation or something to separate.
If you're going to do insulation, one of them that I heard about recently was like the sheep wool insulation. And one of the benefits of that, I saw it actually not for cannabis use, but they're using it for like RVs. And one of the things they said is it keeps the RH between, I want to say it was like 30 and 50% or something lower. So but it maintains a relative amount. So it won't get too high or too low. And it'll help at least prevent that buildup from happening. I think we have another question, unless anybody else wants to jump in on the tent too close to the wall and moisture building up on the tent. Maybe Matthew has some thoughts on issues of if there's that much moisture, molds and mildews and things that might be forming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so if you have that extra condensation, that is going to make things a lot wetter. And as we all know, that's really great for various microbes that so most plant pathogen microbes I wouldn't really consider to be an issue growing, like having like the ability to grow on like the walls of like an inert material, something like that. But certainly if they get onto your living tissue and even the inert tissues on plants like petals and that kind of a thing, that can also incite fungal growth, bacterial growth, that kind of a thing. But some of those microbes are going to be things that you want too. So it is kind of a balance, and it's sort of it's not really a question I can answer sufficiently as we get better, because we were kind of talking about like the quantification of like inputs essentially. And on that level, I'm curious whether or not beneficial microbes, like I don't know which ones will be optimized more, and if the humidities that we have can be optimized in that way. I mean, it depends on, of course, what microbes we're talking about, and maybe even
it depends on their types of metabolism too, because microbes like plants, they require different types of nutrition, and it has to be balanced too for them to keep growing and populating. So
yeah, specifically like epiphytes that live on the surface of the plant and not in like the root zone or anything like that, or in the bulk soil. I'm kind of curious about our ability to kind of create a like first layer of defense on the outside surface, and how competent we can get at like producing isolates that are really good at that kind of thing and working synergistically. That'd be pretty cool.
It's one of the reasons why I highly praise and always recommend using the Bacillus subtilis and Trichoderma combination, because it's a bioprotectant, and the Bacillus subtilis is actually an endophyte as well. So what it does is it gives you this dual beneficial protection, where the Trichoderma and Bacillus in soil, when they've scoped it, the Bacillus will live on the fungal filaments, the hyphae of the Trichoderma itself. And so they have a symbiotic relationship. The Trichoderma has a symbiotic relationship with the roots.
Right. It's like just like the root system of a plant. The root system of the fungus basically also has its own microbiome.
Yeah. And so there's a book.
I've seen studies where the combo of those two, the Bacillus subtilis and Trichoderma being present in the soil, imparted PM resistance in plants.
Yeah. So did you also, I don't know, I'll have to look for the link, but I have a Dropbox where it's just filled with like PDFs and stuff like that. And what I've done is I just post it every once in a while. So people can go on there, and there's a bunch of stuff on Trichoderma, Bacillus subtilis. And what's really interesting is it works as a bioprotectant on the phyllosphere as well.
That's super interesting to hear, because I always hear like Trichoderma gets the bad rap. It seems like everybody is like hating on it on the organic side. People say
there's so many kinds of microbes and isolates of species that I just feel like it's kind of hard to really make a good blanket term or blanket sort of point, even for Fusarium and Pythium and things like this.
Yeah. So here's the thing, we have generalizations when we're talking about microbes, because a lot of these things we can't even culture. There's so many different, some things that we think are ubiquitous are actually not. And then there's a really interesting book. I'll have to grab it. I'd have to pause to go grab it. It's one of the books I'm reading right now. I think it's called Soil Ecology, Microbiology, and Biochemistry. I think is the name of the book. And it was written in 1989, but a lot of the principles that they're talking right now are like, I'm seeing more and more like conversations in agriculture across the board. And this is like not new information. And it's stuff that I'm, learning about, things, redox, oxidation, pH, how those things relate, how, different microbiomes support different systems, how just simply aggregate size of your pore space can change the whole biodynamic of the microbiome of that soil. I mean, there's so many different factors.
Speaking of biodynamic, I know a lot of the Hawaiian cultivators use biodynamic methods because they're on an island and inputs are limited, and they have to source their materials a lot, almost exclusively locally. So some of the stuff they import can be used as well. But I'm curious because Sour Diesel Tangy asked in the chat, how was the Hawaiian bud? And I'm also asking more broadly, Brandon, for the people that don't know, you just went on a little trip. So could you tell us a little bit about how Hawaii was, both the flower and the trip down there?
Sure. So if you guys didn't know, I work with a farm out there called Care
Waialua.
Waialua, yeah. And I've been helping them, and they've been expanding. They have the largest patient-based farm on the island of Oahu, which is where like Pearl Harbor is, and the North Shore, where all the big wave surfing is and stuff. And they are, they're fully organic. They use the same methods that I use at my farm, where we're just looking at soil, we're doing the agronomy. Hawaii is it's interesting because it's so highly controlled. It's because of the influx of tourism. That's where I think that generates so much money, and there's so many outside business interest that it's a constant power struggle for the patients and the people that are growing medicine for the patients. They are, now that there is social media, I think that does help with them building community. It really is kind of it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It's obviously a tropical island, and it has beautiful beaches. The local people there are amazing and wonderful and nice and generous. I had a really good time there. I really want to see Hawaii do what Oklahoma's done. And the reason is because what's really strange to me is that place used to be all agriculture, and they used to do ag export. And now it's tourism, and they're not even allowed to export their stuff. And they have avocados that are, massive, and they have bananas, and that you can grow anything in the climate.
All their fruit is insane.
Yeah. Right? There's tons of problems with invasives too. So there's a lot of, I know a guy, Joe Morey.
Listen to this. The guy who owns the property that had,
I know.
He is a marine invasive species biologist.
That's right.
And so he really, he cares about those types of things, and he understands, the ecology. But things can grow and be, you can do it biodynamic cultivation style, where you're not just monocropping, and you have the elements built into it where you're also bioremediating. And I would love to see cannabis become a staple in the agriculture, because it could bring profitability to the people who really need it most. Corporations and the big business that already make millions and hundreds of millions of dollars off tourism. Some of that money could go into the pocket of the local people if they're able to be involved. And it's not just people that are growing. It's not just dispensary owners, but we're talking about all the ancillary businesses. We're talking about the heating and AC guys. We're talking about the electricians. We're talking about the framers. We're talking about, laborers. We're talking about, people who can create businesses very inexpensively and be profitable. That's what the greatest thing about where I'm at is, because it was inclusive, and giving that to the people is huge. And it's like, you have to fight for that. And it's crazy, like how much you have to fight for that kind of stuff, dude. And because there's huge, big, powerful people that have a ton of fucking money and lobbyists behind them. And it's like, if we can't collectively come together and like hold people accountable, or lawmakers and stuff like that, that's just what has to happen.
Personally, I'm kind of skeptical about that somewhat, at least as far as agricultural development in such a fragile ecosystem. I'm familiar with some of the history of Hawaiian culture and agriculture, and some of the stuff that's going on currently. And I would just really like to make sure that those areas are protected. Hawaii is one of the places that has a lot of that going for it. It's a lot in the same way that I really applaud like New Zealand and Australia in that way. But it's a delicate balance, and it shouldn't be hastily, I think, gone about.
I want
No,
to
it
just put
has
it
to
out
be done.
there.
It definitely has to be done with care, and it has to be done properly. Like, but you know, I think that it can definitely be profitable for people there.
I want to say to any of our Hawaiian listeners, aloha, mahalo to all of you. If you ever want to reach out to me personally and link up, I'd love to connect with some of the people in Hawaii. I always am looking to go out there. I've got a buddy. I want to shout out Sean E. in Honolulu, as well as two guys that are now in California, 808 Rooting Prospects, and also Josh LaCroix, who is like Subcool, who has the Alpha 1. He had a double lung transplant, and he is working with Cream of the Crop out here and giving out full spectrum oil to people in need. And he's just a great person, awesome dude. So cheers to him and all the other awesome Hawaiian family out there. Just great people. Love to connect with them. And it's only a 5-hour flight here from California. When I was in Ohio, it was 10 hours, which is a lot more daunting, and a 6-hour time change versus a 3-hour time change. So I'm definitely looking to get back out there sometime and link up with the good people and do some of the kaha nalu, is what they call it, body surfing. Get out there, get in the waves. That's where I learned out there is it's beautiful, and the water and weather is just amazing. I think if we do a cheap home grow meetup, that'd be one of the most badass places we could ever do it. It'd be a little bit more expensive and difficult, but definitely worth the trip.
Oh, the weed was great. They have some amazing sun grown, but the thing is, it's a tropic island, so you got to make sure you can't like open your weed up and then go cook something and come back and expect your weed not to be like fully moist.
Oh, wow.
So you got to make sure you take care of your weed if you live in Hawaii. It's like it's not like Oklahoma. It's dry out here. You know, it's probably like 40% humidity in here. So I can like keep my little nugget right here and smoke on it. That's the one thing that I did notice. It's, you know, because it's a tropic island.
Florida's that way. It's so fucking humid that if you leave your bag open, the bud gets all sticky and you can't grind it up anymore. Like, not in a good way. It's just like all moisture.
Yeah, I was in Florida a couple of years ago, working with some hemp grow, and it was so cool to see like it had like the rain, like the intermittent raining was pretty nice as a San Diegan. That's kind of novel.
That's
And,
real rain. They get real rain down there. It comes down hard as
yes.
fuck. In San Diego, we get like light trickles. Occasionally, we get a serious storm, but nothing like Florida, where it'll come down for like an hour and then just stop and be 100 degrees and 100% humidity. Summers in Florida are crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Definitely a lot. Big change from here, where we get very, very, very little rain. It's like pretty much people leave their convertible roofs like down and off here in San Diego because it's just like, oh, it's gonna be sunny again for another day. Like clouds and a little bit of cold is the worst we usually get. So definitely a big fan of that about living out here. My cat's assaulting me for some attention right now, so I'm gonna pass it over to Spartan Grown and ask you what you're smoking on. How is your night going?
I am smoking on some sour melon because my weekend has been long and I'm trying to stay awake. Sour melon is doing pretty decent. I also had been shout out to Dankman Dan. I've been hitting some of his Primal Punch rosin. I've been topping my bowls with it. I fucking just love this shit. So
It looks so fire. By all accounts, everyone loves it.
This has been sitting on my desk for like a week and it's still fucking stable. It's not dripping. I mean, it's fucking good shit.
Beautiful color. I bet you it smells great.
Oh yeah, it's just like Hawaiian punch. Hawaiian fruit punch is what the flavor is to me.
That's definitely
punch.
Got some nice rosin in my fridge right now. Some front, some sour cheeseberry.
Okay, shout out Drew Gross. He gifted me. He did a mix. He mixed Mac with GMO rosin. So I've got that. I want to use that for the hash time next show and see what that's about.
Like sweet.
I was gonna show the viewers. I came across this cool thing at, I think it was like Staples or Office Depot in the coffee center. They have this like stand and it has all these cool charts. I don't know if I ever showed it before, but there's all these different cool stuff. There's like natural medicines, social media stuff. There's the elements, table of elements, all the muscular system. There's just all kinds of cool.
It looks like they're
nerd
laminated too.
information. Yeah, they are. They're all like laminated worksheets. They fold out into like like a spreadsheet, into like a wide page.
Oh, nice.
So
That's cool.
Each one is like a spreadsheet front and back, and it has Q&A, all these like different things. This one's talking about, what's this one? I think this is physics or something, chemistry.
It's funny, if you were like a 13-year-old version of yourself, or like 15 or whenever you started smoking, and you went back and said like, hey, when you're however old you are right now, you're going to be really interested in going and printing out all this information and reading stuff that like in school you'd be like, fuck that shit. Like, I don't want to learn this. But now when we're adults, it's like that lifelong learning process. When we actually want to learn it, it's so much more enjoyable to take it at your own pace and dive into those things that you're interested in. So Brandon, I'm actually really happy to see that you're expanding your knowledge outside just cannabis and becoming a more worldly person. And it's always good to, renew your education and update whatever you already have in your mind. It's never a bad idea to keep learning.
Fun stuff, when you got a time, you can always learn something.
Maybe I was just projecting from my own childhood, because when I was a kid, I fucking hated school, but now I find a lot of this shit really interesting. And it's like back then I'd be like, no, fuck. It was usually like the teacher relationship oftentimes.
Yeah, I hated school. I hated school too, but I loved to learn stuff. I loved, the pursuit of knowledge was always there for me. I wanted to know why and how, and that really drove my imagination.
I think a lot of the people that I talk with, they end up in school bored, because like usually they go to the level of like the slower kid. And if you're a little bit quicker, you get your stuff done, you're just sitting around kind of like waiting, and they're not going to like give you more work to do, and you're not going to ask for more work to do, God forbid. Otherwise, like everyone in the class is going to fucking hate you. And so there's definitely a lot more to the schooling than just like the education, I guess. It's interesting to think about those social dynamics that impact a lot of people's education, whether they get a good one or a not so good one.
Spartan,
you're muted.
I think it's a direct result of when we went away from the one-room schoolhouse. Because if you look at the way we used to do it, you'd have you would progress at your own pace. And once you passed that level, whether you were a quick study or a slow study, you took it at your own pace and you learned it. Whereas there's no time for that. There's no time for that in today's society. It's like, here's what
they got to move you through the system.
Yep, and they gotta make sure you get pushed through, and
you gotta go.
That's the reason I think that our education system went to hell right there. That was the first nail in the coffin.
All the corporeal punishment probably didn't help so much either.
Yeah.
Well, and also standardized testing plus No Child Left Behind, which had good intention, but like I work with kids who have special needs, and No Child Left Behind causes a lot of difficulties because they try to get forced through grades and then like mainstreamed into some stuff that they shouldn't be in, and it causes a whole bunch of issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what happens when you have an autistic, child who has come to a point where it's like, this is the end. They're not going to be able to go further. Is it better to keep them in school or try to give them like skills for their life that they could be good at?
I'm working with a kid right now who's at that point. He's like a senior in high school, and he's like, should I stay in school and do online learning, like maybe 2 days a week? I think they're going to go back to 4 days a week in person. But for the last year, it's been learning on a laptop, just like we're doing like a Zoom meeting. This is actually his education. So the parent was like, well, the adult school is doing in-person stuff like mentorship, like he could go learn carpentry or other things like that. So she's trying to push for that, even though he hasn't finished all of the course load, because at the end of the day, some of the math and other things, like the more advanced things that he's working on, might not necessarily translate, but maybe it's worth the experience of things. I don't know. It's really hard to say what's exactly perfect, especially in a time like this where things are so stretched thin and stressed out. Anybody's just happy to get their kid decent service, let alone any service, because a lot of the schools, they can't even get the teachers to come in. But to get back on the growing topic, because I think we've kind of swung out into left field there a little bit. I'm curious to go back to Kyle Breeder a little bit. Other than the, new crosses that you got going on, have you had anything come down recently? Like, what are you smoking on? And what are some of your go-tos? Kyle, are you still with us? Are you muted?
Oh, sorry.
No
I
worries.
just sort of
Caught you with food in your mouth.
Yeah.
I was eating earlier too.
What was the
I had a
question?
sandwich.
It was perfect timing. I was just saying, like, what were you smoking on before you started going in on the pizza? Because maybe people want something that'll give them the munchies.
Well, I tried this new. I moved to Acton, Mass. Went from where I mean, I was living somewhere else, but I moved to a different part of Mass in Acton, and I tried a new pizza place, and it's not that well. It's not that good, but it's good enough to eat. But yeah, I mean, I've been smoking on violet, man. I should get that flower tested because whatever's inside of it, man, it's just like it's just a perfect combination for anybody that deals with anxiety when it comes to like smoking certain types of weed. And it's funny, the more and more people I talk to, you know, because growing up, I mean, I was taking like 20-person gravity bong rips out of the bathtub with the commercial grade Poland Spring bottle, and just doing crazy shit. But then in my mid-20s, something happened, and we've had this conversation a bunch already. But it's just weird that how I've talked to more and more people that used to be full-time heavy smokers of kind of having the same issues. And but I don't want to just say like, oh, well, I just can't smoke anymore. So I was just kind of been on the journey of finding like, well, what is it that's causing that? You know, do I need ratios? Do I need certain cannabinoid profiles? And so I've been smoking violet, which is AKA Mendo Perp or something else. You know, basically the ripoff of what's his name, Jack?
The star pupil or whatever. Yeah, it's it might be a Mendo Perp S1, but they claim it's a whole bunch of different stuff like Thai and Paki and Afghani.
Yep. So I've been smoking that, and that seems to be doing pretty well. I've tried 1-to-1s, which work pretty well. But I'm more excited about this skunk because I mean, I believe there's, and I haven't done any tests yet, but I'm going to be going to, is you know, just taking like these old school skunks and just like doing a test on those, and just seeing, and then maybe taking my rock candy, just seeing, and maybe a bunch of the other stuff that I have, all the flower that I have, and just seeing like the difference between what was then and what we have now, like what we lost. So
whose skunk is it?
Pretty exciting. Old timers.
Is it from
Old timer one? Which I just
That's through Blue Skies Vienna. It's the Old Timers one. I would imagine.
Yeah, I just watched the whole interview. He was on the Future Cannabis Project, and he kind of went like more, instead of him just like doing these shouts that he does, you know, or these short, small paragraphs of him blasting out, you know, this and that. I got to hear like the actual. If you go on Future Cannabis Project, he does like a whole hour of him talking about where it came from and how Sam the Skunk Man got involved, but this was like pre-Sam, and you know, how basically how Sam kind of screwed it up, and there's just a really deep conversation and getting to know more about where the origin of these genetics came from. And I enjoyed it, man. I liked it. And you know, it's not even just the skunk side, but he has all those the Pheno Hunter pack with like these different hazes, all this old school material that's like literally old school, like it hasn't really been, nothing mainstream is involved in it, you know, anything past 2000s, it's all 2000 behind, you know, like 80s 90s and stuff. So I'm extremely excited about that. To me, that's like the most precious thing that I have out of all my seeds, because I care more about what was then than what we have now personally. But that's coming, so I'm working on that as well. I'm kind of sift through that, and there's some wicked unique terpene profiles and you know, statures. I am busting out the land race too. I just did that yesterday. I had like these huge.
Before we talk about the land race, I got to ask the question everybody in the chat, or eventually is going to want to ask. Did you find anything that's actually like roadkill skunky, true fucking dead on, like damn, it smells like a skunk sprayed or died on the road skunk with the old timer one skunk?
They're only in week 1.
Oh, okay, so it's too early. Too early.
I have some old seed stock. I'm thinking that it was the MK Ultra male used in the cross, because it came across in a lot of the different varieties, some stronger than others, but it wasn't just full on like arid skunk, like, oh, but it has if you weren't from cannabis and you were growing that and the neighbor smelt it and wasn't familiar, it would smell like skunk, because it's more like this. It's more like kind of like a body odor, oniony body odor, or like a garlicky body odor. And it also has kind of like this this underlying like pine that kind of brings like that funk like forward in it, if that makes sense. Right? Because you have these like these tones that are kind of like that are in there. They're solid. They're like almost meaty, but it's got to be like, or it's like those vegetables, the onion and garlic, but it's got to be like pushed like to a new level, you know? That's kind of like what I got from the
So that, I mean, it sounds like to me like you're describing like GMO and
Yeah.
Diet Burger and Cam almost and that kind of stuff.
But Kyle sounds like he might be on the track because I've seen a few people that have grown out. I follow a dude who spent like thousands of dollars, Laserface 415, something like that on Instagram. He's bought everybody's skunk. If it was called skunk, roadkill skunk, skunk spray, anything called skunk, he bought it and grew it out. And like he said, none of it, at least in his cultivation environment, came out skunky. But other people have found that I've seen growing it independently, like third party, who went through Blue Skies Vienna, who's had their page just like Dr. MJ, locked or taken down on Instagram several times, unfortunately, and found skunky stuff. But in that Pheno Hunters pack, I also heard stuff like vomit. There's like vomit phenos and like a whole bunch of like nasty, raunchy, funky
dead
shit.
carcass. Yeah.
yeah.
You know what the best part about that whole podcast, if you guys listen to it, and so obviously the whole point of going back in time to intrigue me, and like you just said, Jack, like some of the stuff that these people are going through, and the other people on that panel were farms that had zero affiliation with this guy, zero, and they were all like brand, like basically us, but all different parts of the state, and they didn't know each other, the other groups. And the one thing that was the most important part of their conversation to me was they all actually felt true medicinal benefits from it because it was obviously, I would assume, there's different cannabinoids present in that flower, and all different testimonies in their own way. And they're like, man, it just extremely helped me with, you know, I had arthritis, and like, man, that weed's like the only weed that actually, like, he's like, it brought me back when I was, you know, whatever. So I just think overall it's just like a really good, just a good avenue to go down if anyone's interested in checking that out.
Definitely check it out. Future Cannabis Project is awesome. They're a lot bigger channel than us, but it's always good to send traffic over to them. I will say I have arthritis and lots of different strains help me out. Farm cut Girl Scout cookies being the most beneficial as far as a flower would go, but bubble hash of lots of different things from Blue Dream to anything else. There's tons of different strains. It has high amounts of humulene or beta caryophyllene, which I just found out. This is a fun fact for anybody. Humulene is also known as alpha caryophyllene. I don't know if anybody knew that, but that's a fun fact. And you won't rarely see it called alpha caryophyllene, but they're
like
different
it.
analogs.
What, is it
Alpha.
similar to the beta and that it can bind to the CB2 receptors?
I'm not sure on that.
Make that stand out.
I know that humulene, and I'll say that because it's easier to say, is one of the ones that they use in products like Skinny Weed here in California. It's an appetite suppressant, as well as THCV. So that's one of the cool little things about terpenes. Thunder Dan asks, what's the best pine terp strain? Pinene, there's two different pinenes. There's alpha pinene and there's beta pinene. So beta pinene you're going to find in a lot of stuff like Durban Poison. What else has it? Trainwreck. And then alpha pinene, if you Google like highest alpha pinene strains, you'll see stuff like Blue Dream. They list a whole bunch of other ones, Sour Diesel, a few different ones. But there's one that I'm about to do a hunt after I'm popping a few of the seeds that I'm growing right now. 79 Christmas Bud from CSI Humboldt through Tom Hill, as well as Pine Tar Kush. Actually, the Pine Tar Kush is from Tom Hill. I think the 79 Christmas Bud is a Packy inbred line that he open pollinated and made preservation seeds of. So
Just
I have those
those
packs.
pieces placed,
I
and
think-
you just got some of those seeds too, the Christmas bud or something's called that.
I think if you can find a variety that has a really high amount of terpinolene and a high amount of pinene as well, those two stacked on top of each other at the same rate would probably just be super piney, because that terpinolene, I mean, it's like what makes those really, really pungent, like sour kind of smells. And if you stacked pine on top of that, ooh.
Eagle thinks that terpinolene but to me it smells piney. It's part of the terpinene family. So terpinene family includes alpha, beta pinene, as well as terpinolene. So just like humulene is sort of related to beta caryophyllene, terpinolene is related to pinene. So you're right. And Jack Herrera, another one that would be in those lists that'll say top 10 most piney strains, a lot of Jack Herrera has terpinolene. And that terpinolene, as well as pinene, limonene, or limonene, have lots of uplifting effects. So they're often associated with like sativa highs or uplifting effects and things like that. For those that might not like that, some people really, really like it. I know a lot of Fergroli stuff, from what I understand. In Michigan, he makes a lot of great concentrates, has that higher terpinolene. So it's something that you can seek out and find, and it has a very distinctive smell. But until you have it isolated, or strains that you see lab tests and say, oh, this is the highest in terpinolene, and then you smell it and it hits your nose, and you can start to identify that profile. It's a fun way of exploring your cannabis, but can be hard because everybody's receptors are actually a little bit different. Because like, although he grew it himself, he thinks that the J1 it smells like, he said, like dragon fruit, which to me, dragon fruit's not a very odoriferous fruit. It's more like bland smelling. But maybe the dragon fruit I've had isn't the best. I need to go to Hawaii and get some real fucking dragon fruit or something. But to me, the J1 is like piney to like woody, almost got like lime. Depends on the pheno. Like the guy that I got it from, in the summertime, it's
There's
more
a lot of Jack, dude. There's so many different varieties of it out there. There's like the J13, there's the J1, there's the original.
XJ13.
Yeah,
and dragon fruit for that matter.
Yeah, so it's, but a lot of them, I know what you're saying too. That like pine cleaner.
A lot of Subcool stuff had some like lemon cleaner pledge, like Jack the Ripper had like lemon and pine. Vortex and some of those other things could have some pine in there and some lemon. A lot of cleaner smells. Spartan, you grew some Vortex. Did you get any of those cleaner smells in there?
Lemon, yeah, all straight lemon cleaner, and especially outside. Like it was like 100 times better outside. It just came so strong. And then but the bag appeal was like 10 times worse. It looked fucking terrible.
Like a leafy monster, just tons and tons of leaf.
Yeah, but it smoked so fucking good, and for ages. I mean, we had like big totes of it, and I mean, it would be months later, and it was still fucking fire.
Yeah,
the whole time. Like it stayed. It didn't fucking decay. I love that shit. I have one Vortex seed left, and one of these days I'm gonna pop that shit.
I got some Jack's Cleaner 2 and then Jack the Ripper. I was like planning to do a Subcool F2, but then I got it taken over by my Velvet Punch F3 project. But I ended up, because, and I think this is like the Rasta God or Ja or whoever, the cannabis Shiva looking over, was like, you should have fucking stuck with your plan, which I guess like I wanted to make more Velvet Punch, so that's what ended up happening. But with the Subcool lines, I didn't want to make F2s of Jack the Ripper because I saw Rasta Jeff was making F2s of Jack the Ripper, and I didn't want to like step on his toes in any way, because if he likes the F2s or any of the crosses from that, maybe he wants to sell them. I don't want to like get into some, thing, or even just F2ing Subcool's gear could be problematic enough. But so I ended up trying the Chernobyl instead. So I was like, okay, I'll do this and wait at least a year or two until I start messing around with the Jack the Rippers. And it ended up, I had some germination issues with the Chernobyl and didn't end up getting male and female. So I wasn't able to forward that line. And I was like, I feel like if I would have just stuck with what I wanted to do, maybe I would have had better results. And the Chernobyl, unfortunately, were kind of from like a not as reputable seed source, in my opinion, because my other buddy who got them from that guy had germination issues as well. They at least got a few more to sprout than I did, but still had issues, where the other ones I've gotten from other sources that I still have are from a first hand. Like when I DM Subcool, he said like, go through JBC at the time, James Bean Seed Bank, or it was JBC Seeds. And he's like, they feed me, they pay my food bills. It's because like that's, he's selling seeds, for that's part of the way that he's making his living. And so I was happy to support where I wanted, because there was actually a few other people on Instagram that were his seed sellers. So I didn't know who was legit and who wasn't. So I wanted to ask him like, who is actually legit? So I got some from there that I've got in my vault and refrigerated. So when I get a spot and the desire to grow them out, I'm definitely planning to make more seeds with them and hopefully find some killer phenos in the F1s and F2s.
I have a stupid amount of seeds, dude. Like I have so many seeds to go through. It is like, I mean, I people send me seeds all the time, and I'm like, I'm gonna go through them though because I have that container. So for the next couple years, man, I'm just gonna be popping beans in that thing.
I need to build me one of those, man, or get me one
Dude,
somewhere because
so awesome.
I would love to. I got a ton of seeds, and I pop new seeds every single run because I want to grow through them and see what the potential is that's out there. There's so much fire shit, and people are always making new stuff, and even some of the old stuff, like that Kyle was talking about earlier. Sometimes you go back in time with the genetics, and it blows you the fuck away.
And here's the cool thing, right? So a lot of these people that have these genetics are might be smaller, unknown breeders, you know, and they're just making fucking fire. And it's like, you know, you don't have these are the kind of people that are like, oh, they recognize what you were doing. They're like, oh, hey, let me send you some more beans, you know, and it's like, damn.
Yeah, like shout out to My Name is Earl. We were talking about him. I think they're a lesser known breeder, but you've grown some of their crosses and you've got tons of fire. So they're more on my map than they ever were before. I want to shout out Doja DNA, who sent me the best beans I've ever grown were free and sent to me from this dude Doja DNA. And he's actually inspired me to now I'm looking into like some land, trying to there's the hemp permit's like under $1,000 in California. So getting in on the ground floor and like doing it all by myself, 100% in-house. I have another project that's THC cannabis coming up in the future, but it's being delayed and being delayed and being delayed. So I'm just like, I want to grow some more plants and I want to get outside under the fucking sun and grow in a loop, like a little hoop house, greenhouse, and breed some hemp for terpenes or minor cannabinoids, and maybe make some like gel caps, like CBD, CBN, THC.
Delta 8 is pretty hot right now.
Yeah. What I'm not even really growing for what's hot, but even if there's some medical benefit to it, I'm just curious to explore because there's all these minors that I'm curious, like minor cannabinoids, flavonoids, esters, aldehydes, ketones, all that.
What's happening with the Delta 8? So they're making that from hemp, right? And they're doing some kind of conversion into something that is psychoactive.
No, Delta 8 is psychoactive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're making it into something, but is it Delta 8 is they're making it from hemp, right?
Yep.
Are you thinking of how some people are growing hemp and then spraying like distillate on it? Is that what you're?
No. They're talking about some type of
it's
process.
A loophole. It's a loophole because THC is illegal, but the THC Delta 8 is not. Delta
9 is, yeah.
So they're breeding the Delta 8 into the hemp and not, and still keeping the Delta 9 low, and then extracting the Delta 8 and putting it into all kinds of products. I saw an advertisement for Delta 8 of some lady, and it was in a drink, infusing a drink and saying you should take it every night, and it's like just having a nice drink. I'm like, what? It's like alcohol? I haven't had just Delta 8, so I don't know what the effect's like.
Really?
I never tried it.
I'm going to have to get some.
I get advertised it. I see it around, so I'm curious myself. But definitely with hemp, like I talked about in one of the other episodes, you work with the California Department of Food and Ag, CDFA, versus the Bureau of Cannabis Control, which CDFA is strict, granted, but they're not the BCC. The BCC is so far up everyone's ass with the regulations. They have metric where every single plant has to be tagged with a plastic tag, which is a mountain of bullshit. Unfortunately, I've looked more into it recently.
Metric out here too.
Many states have metric. There's a big list. It's 10 or more already have metric, and it is just logistical nightmares, and it creates way more waste. And like you were talking about, Brandon, with Hawaii, with like bureaucratic bullshit, that is the definition of bureaucratic bullshit that they're just pushing in there to try and make it seem like it's safer or more of a tracked process. But there's so many better ways of doing things that I don't want to get too deep into the complaints because I do think it will change over time, and maybe they will be understanding. But Bollywood Bam,
so
breeder from God, now I'm blanking on Coastal Seeds. He's one of the Coastal Seeds breeders. He started going into the hemp side of things as well because he said it's so much easier to work with the CDFA. They let you have way more plants, way more land, way less regulation. They're like, oh, even if you go hot with your hemp, he said they're pretty understanding as long as it's like not super hot, like you're not growing like high THC stuff. Like if you're at like 1% instead of 0.3, they'll let you like remediate the crop and do different things with it. So it's much more open and accepting. So I'm definitely looking into it. Even if I just was doing it to distill terpenes and get fucking vials of terps where I could steam distill it myself in house and grow a bunch of plants outside for medicine for myself, my wife, and friends and family. So definitely looking more into that. So you might hear some Jack Greenstock hemp work on the horizon. And shout out to Vegan sending me more seeds. He just hit me up for my address, and he does CBD and hemp work. He's got one of his cultivars registered actually as a hemp cultivar in California. So I might start with that.
Imagine what you can do with your knowledge on terpenes and how they affect different ailments, and you can try to get a blend together, like a certain strain of hemp that you can sell as just straight flower, and they could smoke it. You know what I mean, and get a medicinal effect on it.
Dude, I've seen some really good indoor flowers. Shout out to HLG. They've got an indoor hemp farm where they're growing it in DWC. But I've seen people growing indoor hemp flower for smokable flower in like Washington, D.C. and some other areas where like cannabis wasn't legal quite yet. But they're growing smokable good, like purple, pink. Like I was like, damn, it looks like I'm looking at buds on Instagram. I scrolled through, it's like bud porn. I'm like double tapping all their pictures on their page. 'Cause I'm like, this looks fire. Like hemp, that Bubba hemp, Kush hemp E1 from
They're doing
Humboldt
their own
Seeds.
breeding. They're doing their own breeding in there now for HLG. I can't remember his name now. I follow him too. The head grower there.
Hell
He-
yeah. And shout out to the Oregon brothers, the CBD, Oregon CBD. They're doing crazy shit with the CBG cultivars and the just really resistant CBD cultivars and the unpollinatable hemp, which is not the side of things that I'm going into. I'm more interested in the flavors and the medical effects and just growing for the fun and the beauty of the plants. I'm not going to be growing like seed crops or anything like the fabric. Figure out somebody locally that can make it into like plastics or a rope, whatever
I
the
was just
excess.
talking about that sequences place. I was saying, can you imagine? Because just with my little autoflower, the seeds that came out of that. Can you imagine if you fully wanted to seed out an outdoor plant? How many fucking seeds that would be? Oh my good lord. That's what seed breeders need to be doing. I don't know why they're messing around.
The botrytis and molds and issues outdoor can be more difficult. But my buddy Vegan Doja, that's where he does all of his stuff outdoor greenhouse in Northern California, as far north as you can get without hitting Oregon, and he had a lot of success. And he has the healthiest seeds I've ever popped. Like when the second they germinate, like less than 24 hours, already got a tail. They're sprouted up, vigorous from day one. So I can't speak highly enough of this guy, and most people really don't ever see him or put him on their map, but I think his work is incredible, and I'll be his cheerleader until people start growing more. The Velvet Punch, now that you've got it spreading around Michigan, people are like, oh, that's Jack's Velvet Punch. But I'm like, no, it's Doja's, because I really just F2'd it. I was standing on the shoulders of giants, which everyone's really doing. Kyle was talking about he had his original work earlier, and I respect it. Everybody who breeds is doing their own original work, whether they do one cross or 100. There's a lot of judgment on breeders and breeding and how it should be done. I think people should have fun and do what they want to do and follow their heart and their passion, whatever they want to do, follow that. And there's going to be people that align with you and there's going to be people that disagree with you, but just do what you love and grow the plants that you like. That's my one big thing with it. But we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, whether you made a single F1 or you took it to F6 or you have your own original crosses or whatever. It's like at some point somewhere we got the work from somebody else. Like we didn't pull it out of thin air. Cannabis comes from nature, and we should all celebrate the plant and not hoard it. The whole spirit of collaboration is what it's all about: sharing it and spreading that love, giving those seeds out, giving those clones out, and making friends and family in the community. Because the world can be a pretty shitty place, and generally the cannabis space is a really awesome place if you put out that right energy.
For sure. Like Sequence got a house. We went out there this weekend. We christened it. I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures, but we had, that place was so smoked out. It was ridiculous. He's crazy, man. He even was live streaming it to he dropped a link to the live stream in the Broski chat. So they could log in, the people that weren't able to make it, and they could log in. But dude, I'm not going to name names. One person left and then fucking logged into the live stream and live streamed himself driving home, and he was still talking back and forth to us. It was cool. It was pretty fucking sweet. And it's moments like that make you forget about the bullshit of the world. You know what I mean? It's just like a reset, it recharge. I'm sure Brandon felt the same way, even a million times better when he came back from Hawaii. It was just like that reset, and now he's ready to hit the ground running. You know what I mean? It's
got
important.
a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, but it's important though. You're ready to hit it, aren't? I mean, you're not like stressed to the max. You just got that recharge, and I don't know.
We're trying to right now. I have a lot going because we're trying to figure out what we want to do because we want to move. We have, the kiddo here who, she has autism, and so we're with school and the struggle with that, and then trying to figure out if work is the best thing because she wants to work with horses and she loves horseback riding and all that. So there's that, and then me being close to the farm because I'm close to the facility, but I don't spend very much time there anymore, as I just do majority consulting, and I go in there a couple times a week, check on everything, do some extra stuff that needs to be done, like taking clones today or whatever. But I just want to be closer to the farm. And it's just about figuring out, what's next. Do I build up on the farm? Do I just live on the farm? Do I try to find a piece of property near the farm?
Well, I would look more further down the line and look what your end game is and build from there, because the little step here, then the little step here, then little step here, you end up putting yourself back 5-10 years if you would have just went from this step to that step.
Well, that's the reason why we're trying to figure out what we want to do, because I think that we could buy our own place pretty soon if we waited and maybe just moved into a trailer, put that on the farm, and then just worked for the season out there too, because we have so much going on out there. We have so much land. We're doing this huge project with full duplexes, seed lines, the 2 varieties that he has. I'm gonna buy up all his seed stock.
I think that's a huge advantage for you to be right there on the property. Then, I mean, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, just because
you're gonna have some long days, some long nights, especially planting stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
I want to say, Brandon, offline, if you ever have any issues with, my specialty for the last several years, I've worked exclusively 7 days a week with children on the spectrum, autism, and so I've got a lot of experience in dealing with problem behavior and limited communication.
When we get off, we live, definitely we'll have a little conversation.
And just whenever like you see like you or your lady are having an issue, like struggling with the kid, you can just send me a message like, hey, we're having this come up, like what would you do? And I might be able to offer a few solutions, because that's basically what I do full time. And those kids are some of the coolest, fucking smartest people you'll ever meet. You just have to believe in them and give them a little bit extra time. They can do unbelievable. It's like some of the kids I work with will kick my ass in tennis.
I see what she does with horses, and it's just a thing that they're just if you can get them focused on what they're passionate about, they're like full drive at it.
100%. Couldn't agree more with that. And that's a lovely characteristic about them, or people in general. I think a lot of us are super passionate about what we do and dive deeply into the things. So it's something that you can relate to with them there. But
definitely.
Spartan Grown, I know we're coming up to that point where I know you said you're a little bit tired tonight, so I don't want to burn up all your energy on the first run. I know you got hash time to look forward to over there on Michigan Bros Grow Show coming up in a little bit.
It's a bit marathon for me tonight. Yeah.
I'll let the dogs out, got to refresh your water, your drinks, your tray, all that good stuff. But let the good people know where they can find you at, and let me know if you have any thoughts and final comments before you go.
Sure. Thanks for having me, of course. You can find me at Spartan Grown on Instagram or spartangrown@gmail if you want to send me an email. Both those work. I am on a Discord here and there, but I hate it. I'm probably going to delete it, so don't even try that. Shout out to the chat, you guys. I wasn't fucking keeping up with you. I'm just having a rough day today. I'm just tired. But I'll be back fresh and bright next week, and I got one more show to get through. I'm going to bed. Girls love, guys. We'll see you next week.
Girls love. Later, Spartan.
Peace and love, Spartan Grown. You can find him on Instagram at Spartan Grown. You can find his commercial work at Mitten Canico. Always a great dude. I saw him Friday on Grandmaster Level show. He's going to be on Michigan Bros Grow Show tonight. Probably tomorrow night. You can catch him on the late sesh. So Spartan Grown is a little bit of everywhere. Great dude. And we're always lucky to have him on this panel. Absolutely. Matthew, did you have any thoughts or comments that you have been holding back that you might want to slip in while we still got a little bit of time left here before we go and do our final sign-outs?
Yeah, I always like having an opportunity to mention this point. I've mentioned it many, many times, and I'll continue to do so. It's springtime, right? It's Easter today, in fact. And so I think it's just really great to consider that you should be very biosecure. Do what you can to be vigilant against pests, get rid of weeds on your property, become aware of the kinds of pests that you can even get in the first place, and have treatments and a treatment plan already kind of in place, just to make yourself more secure. And quarantine incoming plants.
So I got a question. When do the worms start coming around? The
budworms.
Yeah.
Yeah, right around now. So usually for a lot of moths, especially around here where I live in Southern California, but also many other places in North America and around temperate zones that experience a winter, autumn, the caterpillars feed in the spring, summer. Then they pupate, they go into the ground and pupate, or they do something in the leaf litter and pupate. Usually, butterflies have a chrysalis, like a lot of people know, and then they'll kind of overwinter as a pupa, and then they'll come out as an adult around now and start mating and laying eggs. In fact, I have some people who set out traps currently, and they're getting tons of moths in their traps already, and other insects too, because of how they set them up. But yeah, so around now, certainly you should be making or already have in place your plans for budworms and be checking for them, checking for damage, cutting them out, doing what you need to do if you have a great exposure to them.
My buddy Sungrown707 always recommends the Dyna Trap. He says it gets he has an outdoor grow, and he said that really helps him ward off lots of the moths. I wanted to remind the chat and actually tell us stupid, silly Baby Jack Greenstock story, because we had 151 with us live earlier. It's 154, 156, 159. It goes up whenever you look at it, and it starts to change. But 151, which is alcohol, speaking of IPM, that I'll get to that in a little bit. But when I was a young lad, pre-drinking days, we had an apple juice bottle full of this Bokashi 151, which was the number of viewers in the chat, which is the proof of the alcohol. And you take a few swigs of that, and it'll definitely put some hair on your chest. But some of the other people I was with used it as we'll say, as Spartan Grown's favorite thing to do is burn it with fire. That's not my typical IPM strategy. I go to Zenthanol on YouTube, Matthew Gates, Sync Angel on Instagram for my IPM stuff. But if you ever need fire, that Bokashi 151 will definitely do the trick. The reason I told that story was to say, smash that thumbs up. If you're here, we had 151 plus, so I'd love to see at least that many thumbs up. It'd be helping out to get through that YouTube algorithm. I'm going to hit this joint my wife brought up to me. So cheers, everybody, and thank you all for coming this week. We're going to keep going, but I'm going to mute and take a puff while the rest of the panel chit-chat.
Yeah, I'll just add to say that, and I just put in the comments that it's the heliothiene budworms that people are typically dealing with, which is kind of an array of closely related moths called owlet moths. And some of them can... ETI?
BTI. That's what you need to spray.
Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis?
Yes.
Yes.
It's good stuff. That's what Mel Frank recommends outdoor. He says with that and tanglefoot, he's able to get through his outdoor crops alone. He uses a little tanglefoot on the bottom of his stalk to prevent most of the crawly stuff, and then the BTI to prevent the moths and worms and other problematic things. But it really depends on your region. So to say that in California, we're such a broad, diverse place where there's so many different pests, I wouldn't suggest just those two things. I'd recommend doing your research and figuring out what is in your local area. And when it comes about, like Matthew was talking about with spring, a lot of things are coming out. I'm seeing more bees locally, but also lots of other things. So,
yeah, bumblebees are coming out of hibernation. Bumblebee queens, especially species that are local to your area that can't be found in other places, or a lot of bumblebees are endangered. But yeah, I do agree with what Brandon is saying. Have a solution, have a plan like a BTI. I've had great success with BTIs, but you need to apply them preventatively, or have some sort of mesh screen to keep them from getting onto your plants. Something like that can prevent them would be very cost effective.
we got a question in the chat that was asking us, Mamalo710, cheers to you. They ask, where is a good place to get my soil tested and analyzed? I've looked at Soil Doctor. They seemed great. Any recommendations? So Soil Doctor does, I think, like a $45 test from Logan Labs, and then they do like a $50 analysis and let you know, if I'm remembering correctly. I think Smiley's Garden had that done. I would also recommend, if you want to spend a little bit less money and get a little bit less information, but have a basic idea, your local university can often do like a $20 to $40 test on your soil and give you an idea of what you've got as your base. I'd send off maybe your like fresh soil mix versus your soil mix after one run, and do like Brandon talked about in one of the recent episodes, where you take like 5 different soil samples and mix it all up and put that in the bag and send it to him. And I'll pass it over to Brandon because I think he has more firsthand soil testing information than myself.
Yeah, that's a great option. It's probably best option for like a home grower, because um, unless you already have your target levels and know how much amendments you need to get to the target levels, having somebody that knows that already can assist you with that. I don't, go. That's what I would go with, because it's science and data driven. So
On the devil's advocate or lazy stoner grower side of things, I want to ask, what's the difference would you estimate from somebody who's doing a soil test versus somebody who's re-amending kind of like blind, where they do a sprinkle of this and maybe it's 10% too much or 10% too little, or maybe it's way further from that ratio, and or maybe I'm just hoping, like somebody who might do like a build a soil craft blend or re-amend with like worm castings and gypsum and a few other things each run to get their stuff back serviceable so that they can get through another crop.
So, different varieties act differently, have different uptake abilities and different mineral requirements. And so some plants will respond with a wider range of variability. And then there's other varieties that need to have a more accurate nutrient, uh, balance. Therefore, after time, the imbalances will probably compile, and then it gets harder to balance them out. It takes longer to balance them out. I deal with this constantly as a consultant. Typically, when people first come to me, it's because
I
their
got a
soil
question because I know
isn't balanced.
you're going with the autoflowers, and the first time you got autos, to my knowledge, was probably through Guardian of the Lost Terps, and your soil mix was a lot more, let's say, rich or nutrient dense than that particular genetic would have maybe liked.
So
And
those were seeds. Those seeds were hard to grow because they were feral cannabis varieties that came from, who knows how long, growing in that region, centuries maybe. So they were acclimated to a different environment. That's why I had to cross them into something that I knew was going to do well. The varieties that I'm getting are coming from our friend who I've been able to talk to him. Hey, how big do these things get? I mean, they're big as regular plants. They just take 90.
he grows in similar-ish soil to not exactly what you're growing in, but it's organic soils. He's mixing his own stuff up. He has beds, and
It's
shout
going to
out
be
to
really great soil, dude. It's going to just be that same soil that I'm making right now. That's going to be the soil that I use for autos. It's going to be I'm just not going to have to really do much to it. I probably won't have to re-amend or nothing.
That's what I was thinking, and I'm really excited to see your results because Sequence 3 from Michigan Bros Grow Show. He ran a big handful of the full duplex, also known as Mandalorian genetics, autoflowers, and they were beautiful. The Anvil and the Alf have really nice color, and they're big plants. They're people. I watched Abolished Farms and Spartan Grown review on YouTube on the Michigan Bros Grow Show where they talked about their smoke report, and they seem to be really enjoying the flavor and the high. So it seems like it's pretty good stuff, and it seems like you're going to be concentrating it down to stuff like I'm puffing on right now with the little vape cart. And so with that in mind, I think it's definitely going to be a high probability of success in my opinion. I've seen like the Three Bears OG made in a concentrate here on the California market where it's extremely competitive to get on shelves. And my wife has a pretty picky sense of taste, and the people that grew it and labeled it and sourced it, they made it appealing enough that she picked it out. I didn't tell her to go grab it. She got it. She brought it home. We tried it. And it was fucking fire. Like autoflower or not, it was delicious. It was like diamonds and sauce, but from that Three Bear OG, shout out to Mephisto's Genetics for them to have growers in the California market growing it, processing it well, and putting it out there in a way that people wouldn't think, oh, this is an autoflower. They just think, damn, this is some fire diamonds and sauce. It's Three Bears OG. I want to try that again. It's not like who's the breeder or what type of plant is it, photo period or auto. It's just good product at the end of the day.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have to look at where your market lies too, as a farm, and you don't want to have to sit on a bunch of produce or overproduce and spend a bunch of money and then take a loss. So you have to have a plan. With that said, I guess we should probably start our intros. If you guys don't already know me, I'm Brandon Rust, and you can find my IG at rust.brandon. You can find a link to Bokashi Earthworks, where you can find some microbial consortiums and some products for your home grow. And you can also find a link to my farm if you just want to see like weed pictures.
Dank weed pictures that are worthy of the High Times repost and many other great, features on other pages. Brandon's grows are fantastic, and some of the photography you've been able to have done of your recent plants is really spectacular. So definitely check them out. And thank you so much.
Macro on IG does all that work, and I'm gonna have him back out here in a couple months. Let's see what I'll know when I flip. The day that I flip, I'll book him a plane so that way we know when we harvest. He comes out at harvest, and we start taking pictures right at harvest.
That's awesome, man. I'm actually looking into getting myself a DSLR, a Canon Rebel T7, like the most basic DSLR, but I figured out like a budget rig for macro photos. So I'm going to try and teach myself some photography. I've been watching lots of YouTube videos on photography and how to do like insect photography and flower photography and using manual focus macro. And DSLRs take really beautiful images, just like the ones that you see on Brandon's page and many others out there. Shout out to like Eric Nugshots as well. He's got lots of information that he shared freely, and he puts out really incredible work, as well as Swale, SHWALE, and Professor P420. God, there's so many good ones. Bubble Man.
Yeah, there is.
But there's really, really great photography.
Surface Area.
Surface Area is another great one.
I mean, there are so many good macro cannabis photographers out there. I follow a lot of those guys because I just love the imagery. And there's someone where the guy does black lighting and he like illuminates the trichomes with different colors. And
it's crazy, man. Yeah, the art in the community is being captured better than ever, and I'm a big fan of it. And it's more accessible than ever. I'll say the costs have come down. When I was a kid, I always wanted a DSLR, and now looking at the prices, they're half or even less than that of what they cost when I was originally looking at them. So now it's more reasonable. And I also wanted to say Brandon is featured in 50 Strains of Green, which the second edition is printing about 420. And I've got a lot of pre-orders. Most of the people have sent me the address and payments, but I reached out to everybody who said, hey, we'd like a copy of 50 Strains of Green, second edition, and got their addresses, got the payment info. I'm taking PayPal for international, Cash App for the States. If you want to use PayPal in the States, that's fine as well. I could also do Venmo, I guess. I haven't been doing that as much. But cheers to everybody who's pre-ordered. I've seen some people in the chat who've already gotten the first edition, as well as some people who've pre-ordered the second edition. So thank you so much for the support on that. And I want to pass it next to Kyle Breeder. Cheers, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us and staying with us for this evening.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, Jack, I forgot. I got to fill that information from that email you sent me for that first one. So thank you for reminding me. I actually completely forgot. But yeah, my name is Kyle Breeder. For anyone that's been listening, if anybody has any questions about breeding with feminized seeds or breeding in general, feel free to reach out. I'm on Instagram pretty heavily, and really on all social media platforms. I'm pretty communicative on there. If anybody's looking for feminized seeds, you can check out my website at the letter P followed by breeding.com. And yeah, I should have one thing I didn't mention earlier is I will have I'm doing a back cross to basically a version 2 of rock candy. So it should be like an extremely, I would say, a pretty damn stable strain when it came to even just mass population and number and seed in regards to seeds. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I know a lot of people have been waiting for that because I kind of ran out a while ago. But yeah, I'm glad to be here every weekend. I'm so glad we're still doing this. I mean, I think we're beyond 2 years now, aren't we, at this point?
Yeah, we are. We passed 104, which would be 52 times 2 is 104. It's 2 years, and we're past that.
Yeah, it's weird. It feels like just like a couple months ago, Shane recruited all of us.
It's pretty awesome.
I'm so glad he did, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you guys are also here, man. Again, we all talked about it. We never have, but we should all have a day to like meet up, and do something one time. But that's at some point. But
times are changing for the better, and I think it'll happen. Definitely.
We can do it in Oklahoma for sure if you guys want to come out here, because we can go to like a venue and we can like smoke here, like all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah, I'm down.
That's a good option for sure. I think Vegas is another good option because it's central, and they have venues like that as well, and it's opened up pretty substantially.
That would be a good
cheap
option
travel,
too.
cheap flights, cheap hotels.
Oh
so,
yeah.
it's a option, especially even if you don't want to gamble. There's just like shows and other entertainment, and we're there for the cannabis and meeting up with each other, and more so than doing the other stuff. But if you're interested in that other stuff, it's an option. We're definitely going to keep planning and discussing this for the future, because I want to make it happen for sure. I've already met you and Matthew, but I can't wait to meet everybody on the panel one day, including all the people that aren't with us tonight, like Noah the Grower, Dr. MJ Coco, so many others. Miss Nudie Grows, she said she's going to come down here to the States at some point. And this is just a really incredible community, even the people in the chat. I'd love to meet so many of these people because they're consistent names every single week. We're seeing a lot of the same names and even some new names.
Oh, looks like we lost him.
Yeah, we glitched out.
Well,
So thank you all for coming. You can find me at Jack Greenstock. Hello.
yep. You
Yeah, no, I saw my connection is unstable. So I want to, Matthew Gates, have you given your final thoughts and shout out already?
I've not.
So I want to pass it to you before I forget.
So, yeah, that's me. That's Matthew Gates, Integrated Pest Management Specialist. We talked about a bunch of cool subjects related to IPM in general. Also, we had Hota Herb here too, so you can check him out in the beginning if you joined later on. You can find my information about integrated pest management on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, as well as on my Instagram, Sync Angel, and on Twitter at Sync Angel as well.
Thank you so much for joining us. As always, you provide a lot of great content to us, and hopefully soon Dr. MJ Coco's website, as well as Skunk Magazine, as you are now one of their staff over there, which is awesome. Amazing to see, because they're one of the bigger names in the game, and the American one's got printed publication from them. It's cool to see the hard copies, especially as somebody who's making paperback books and hopefully hard copy books and other books in the future as well. It's awesome to see the stuff in print. And I just love to make it concrete and something tangible people can have forever, because Instagram can delete pages, forums can go down, all this other stuff can be temporary. But when we get it in print, it's there and it's much more concrete for these people, and they can hang on to it and use it and share that reference with their people and help them out. So big ups to that. Cheers to everybody. If you want to find me and get more of my information, as you can see behind me here, I'm at Jack Greenstock on Cannabis as well as Instagram. You can also find me at Jack_Greenstock on Twitter, or email me at jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And I got emails and get back to anybody who I haven't responded to just yet on the email. I get back to that the slowest, just as a heads up. But thank you all so much for coming. Peace and love. Jack Greenstock signing out. Catch you all next week. Really appreciate you coming.